Hi, this is Tim Sanders, founder of the Omnia radiation balancer. Pretty soon there will be 5G masts going up all around us, and we want to make sure that you're giving yourself the best protection on the market. Our solution is unique. We use a new source of energy from the fifth dimension to balance radiation fields on any device, making it safe to use. Our results show that this structures water, it balances the blood, and it keeps your body super strong. And yes, it works on 5G. The energy in the patch never runs out, so count up all the radiating devices in your life, stick one on each, and you're done. Click on the link below and you'll soon be bringing balance and strength back to your body. Thank you.
Hey guys, you're listening to Journey to Truth podcast, and tonight we are excited to be joined by Corey Goode. For those who don't know, which I'm sure most of you do, he's known for being a secret space program whistleblower, but he has done so much more for the movement and just the truther community, movies, all kinds of stuff. He just recently got back from Experiencer 2020 conference in Brazil, where he received some new briefings and some updates. So we're going to kind of jump into that and see what he has for us. Welcome to the show, Corey.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah. This is something we've kind of always had on the back of our mind since we started this. So it's an honor to have you on, and we appreciate it. And thank you for coming on. And I just want to jump right in. I want to hear about Brazil. How was that experience? What was that conference like? And then we can jump into the briefings after that.
Well, Experience 2020, if you go to the website, Experience 2020, you can still watch all of the streaming videos. We'd been planning it for a year. I had been invited for over a year. And all of 2020, the big question has been, will it happen? So, right when I had totally given up, we were at ESETI, where we met you guys and hung out with a number of people. One of the people that was going to Brazil said, I'm pretty much sure it's not going to happen. So after that, in my reality, it was pretty much, I had prepared myself, it wasn't going to happen. So as soon as I got home, I got a call from Fabio, one of the organizers, and he said, it's on. And so I packed and tried to prepare as best as I could, traveling during COVID, to the other side of the other hemisphere, in a country that's showing high numbers of COVID cases. It was, we were really planning, and brought security with me that had traveled to South American countries before, made things very smooth. But it was really weird traveling. Because my back, I have a back issue. They were nice enough to get first class for me flying down the 10-hour flight. But I was woken up, 2 times on the way there and 3 times on the way back because my mask slipped below the tip of my nose.
Yeah.
They wake you up and say, put on your mask. So, but other than that, there were very few people, because of the public officials down in Florianopolis. When we arrived, Fabio was kind of freaking out because he was told that the conference was not going to happen, and hundreds of people were coming. So a few hundred people arrived, and 300 to 400 people were there, and we had did all the presentations. And while I was there, I was introduced to an individual, very interesting individual, who had been most of their adult life, I believe, was in the military. And they came forward and they had some very interesting information, some that we're trying to verify some things. Some of the briefings I got were very, very late at night, and the person only did not speak English. So there was translations going on. It was late at night. But there were a few little idiosyncrasies, that we're looking into that could be chalked up to human error. But some of their information was incredibly accurate, stuff that, that I hadn't shared publicly. They had information about Antarctica that was pretty interesting. Well, their story was that they were recruited because of certain attributes they had out of the military into what we call Earth Command.
Earth Command.
Yeah, Earth Command. But that's just kind of a general term for it. It changes names every 10 years. The name changes, and it's for operational security as people cycle in and out. The complete organization completely changes names.
You think it would change even more frequently than that, but 10 years is a long time. Yeah.
And possibly, if something happens, I would imagine that they would, if they're going to make it every 10 years, they would speed it up. But that's just my conjecture. He talked about these incredible suits that they wore as soldiers, Earth Force soldiers. And, the Earth Command that we're calling it is, they just handle things on Earth. They're not, normally going to be taken to Mars, or on spaceships out to fight. They're handling things that occur here, like crash retrievals. He has a number of very interesting crash retrieval stories that we're going to bring, more and more information out. I can't remember all the details right now. It was so much. He described the craft in Brazil and other places. That this Earth Command was used kind of like, the Operation Pounce, so they talked about in the 50s, to where if there was any type of reported crash, that pretty much the United States had worked out a deal with pretty much all nations that we would send a special team in, because the crash retrievals are really quite dangerous. People die.
Sure.
A number of stories like that he shared. And did you have a question before I moved on?
Well, I'm curious about this Earth Command and where they're actually located. Are they South American, or are they located in these domes, or how's deep underground military bases, or do you know?
I was not told where the command resides. I got the impression that it was sort of nomadic. It was not fixed. So that's just my impression, but through the language barrier and all of that. This group is made up of people from all of the different nations of the planet. It's like it was created to protect Earth from ETs and inner Earth people. He talks about as well. He talks actually in detail about the group that he says that there are a bunch of watched zones, usually mountainous areas, where they know caverns are. In almost every case, there's some sort of either extraterrestrial or inner Earth being type creatures or beings that are using that area. He talked about dealing with the beings that are living or can be accessed through the Grand Canyon. The U.S. Army is all over that area. The entrances are guarded very, very closely, because the group is supposed to be. They're not our enemies, but they're not our friends, is the way I was told. That they, if we come into their area, they act very hostile. So that area is cordoned off, and the same group is connected deep within the Earth from the Grand Canyon area, and then another part pops up that they access in the Amazon.
Wow. I've heard there's numerous entrances in the Grand Canyon. A lot of them were closed off. We all know the Egyptian artifacts and all that stuff, and ant people that apparently resided there at one point. That's part of the Hopi prophecy or the Hopi legends. But so we hear about that, but I didn't realize there were still active as far as, and then I just wonder how that works because people, that's a major tourist attraction. So how do they still have the army there, the military presence, and still keep this stuff all undercover? And it's interesting.
Yeah, the military is able to work inside national parks. So I don't know the logistics of it, but the Army's been there for decades. I took my family when I drove to Washington a few years ago. We drove and we saw, so it's, it's prevalent. It's going on.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned Antarctica as far as getting briefings on that. Is there any new information, or was it just stuff that you already knew that he had the same intel?
Well, some of it was, stuff that I already knew. He had actually been through the tunnels dug through the ice that I had several reports of, and the people I had was told that went through those tunnels were U.S. Marines. We heard stories from these people after I came out with information on online. And he described the Aztec, he saw the Aztec looking ruins under the ice. And so that was kind of a verification. And one of the things that he discussed was that they were brought in, they wear these special uniforms that are almost mechanical, but not in the way you would imagine. They're very tight-fitting suits, but they make them stronger, faster. They use them because they battle reptilians a lot. So they were inserted into a part of Antarctica where scientists had accidentally encroached into an area that was Fourth Reich territory. And the way he described it is that these scientists were being attacked by a mixture of a werewolf and a yeti. And he said they were 6 feet tall, bipedal, and obviously they were working on command somehow because they would withdraw at the same time. They would split up and do different patterns that were not of the intelligence of what this beast would be. It was too coordinated. And they found out that the Fourth Reich had genetically engineered these beings to guard entrances to certain bases, that they roamed around and attacked anything that got within a certain perimeter. And these scientists were having some pretty amazing discoveries that they did not want to abandon that were a little bit into this territory. So apparently his operation was brought in and inserted, and they ended up doing a little bit of, not really battle with these things, but keeping them away while the scientists did the work that they wanted to do. So that was...
This was recently, or do you know?
No, this would have been back like 2 decades ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A while back. Yeah. I've read about stuff at very similar expeditions post World War II, and them accidentally coming across during their excavations or whatever, their explorations across these German reptilian bases. And it just, so it lines up with that. So the Fourth Reich, I mean, so do you think that's still existing? Like what is still existing in Antarctica?
Well, from his intel, that was all that he had of what was going on down there now. From my intel, yes, they're very much, still occupying most of the same bases. They gave some of them over to this interplanetary corporate conglomerate that I talk about. A lot of trading went on to, allow Dark Fleet to operate pretty much under the skirt of everything else going on.
Yeah, I was really curious to know like how much of these underground bases, what's actually being taken out right now. We hear all of these rumors about these earthquakes being actual underground explosions and these battles taking place underground. I just didn't know if any of that information was even true, or is that all hearsay?
No, that absolutely has occurred, but not in the frequency, the number that people talk about online. There have been certain bases that have been either destroyed or breached, in the last year especially. Yeah,
so it's good. I mean, I think some of them are definitely not earthquakes. People break down the seismic data, and there's a difference between an earthquake and an explosion. So, and I just wonder if it's actually the base being destroyed, or if it's actually just a battle. You're just hearing explosions from an actual battle. Like I'm so fascinated by what's actually taking place under our feet every day. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, this new person we're calling Daniel, they had been spent extensive time under in the caverns. They actually did 6 months, or either 6 months or 6 weeks. I can't remember. In the language thing too, training underground in these caverns and how to survive and how to battle and how to navigate them. And he told us of numerous, dry
here. Fine. I'll do the same thing.
He told us of numerous battles that they had with reptilians and greys, and he said they're both extremely aggressive. When they're fighting underground, and typically he said for every reptilian that they are able to neutralize, they end up losing about 6 to 8 men, and that's what they're wearing these almost suits of armor. And
wow.
Some of the things he describes about the reptilians is different than what I have seen and heard. He talked about he described the armor that they wore, and he described it as more of like exoskeleton kind of armor that connects to them. And he said their offensive weapon, they didn't carry a staff or any type of weapon, that it was something that was engineered into their body to where it came out, I guess, kind of like Spider-Man, instead of here on the top of their forearm. And he said when they wanted to attack, they would do this, and they would close their fist, and then a plasma beam would shoot. And he said they would, they were very powerful plasma beams. He said typically, they carried weapons that were very similar to conventional weapons. And this might be they may not be able to use beyond a certain type of technology while operating on the planet in case it falls into, the eyes of the public. But he talked about special rounds that were, probably between, a 223 to 308, that instead of gunpowder, they had like this white powder as the accelerant. And when they would fire the weapon, the bullet went several times faster than a conventional bullet. And that it was made out of with the translation, he said, a very hard mineral. And those would, he said, out of 30 shots, 3 would penetrate their armor. They would have to take 30 hits to center mass, and 3 would maybe make it through and kill the reptilians.
Wow. Can you imagine? Like, how do you train for something like that unless you know your enemy? So they have to be well aware of their technology and what they're capable of. Otherwise, you're coming in blindfolded, basically. So are there training facilities that are specifically designed just for this?
That's a good question. And one of the things that kind of made me go, was because, we're still vetting this person, but, they're, you always have to figure out, is this person relaying a story they heard, or did they experience it? So we're still vetting it out, but it's a lot of corroboration. I'm sorry, what was?
I was just saying, is there actual training facilities? Do they know about their armor and stuff?
Yeah. What was strange is they knew about the armor. He knew about the armor, the weak places in the armor, and all of that. But when I asked him, had he ever heard that reptilians had a primary and secondary heart, and he said that he had not heard that, and which is, totally fine. They may just be given a kill box that they're told to go after, but typically I would think a specialized warrior like that, they would teach you the physiology and weak points of your enemy. But maybe not all of that doesn't matter with the armor. I don't know. But, we're being, we have to be very careful. It'd be very easy to bring someone in that has been given some information that I haven't shared that would hook me. And then, then bad things happen. So this person seems really genuine, but we've, seen that before. We're vetting them out. We have, like 3 different people that are vetting out their military credentials and some of the other things that they told us. There was just one inconsistency, and it was like at midnight or 1 a.m. when we were getting the information from them. They gave us a number of casualties that occurred in a conventional war that they claimed had an ET aspect to it, and the numbers were just off on the casualty count, fairly significantly. But the battle in that area did happen, and this also was 20 years ago, so he's recalling over time, so we have to cut him a little bit of slack. But we're just vetting this person because sometimes information comes in and it's too good to be true, and this is a lot of really very rich information, rich with details. When he talks about the crash retrievals, he talks about, the Grays crashed on this date in Brazil, and it was a 120-meter craft, and we brought our teams in, and they cut it into pieces or put it on flatbed trucks and drove it off. And anyone who happens to, according to these rules of engagement, at least 20 years ago, anybody who unfortunately witnessed it came walking onto the scene, seeing, look at this crashed UFO. This military force that he was a part of, they neutralized them. They killed them. There's to leave no chance of any type of witness.
That doesn't surprise me at all. At all. Actually, it's funny. What?
No, it's same.
We were just at East Seti, and I had a really crazy experience dream while I was down there of watching the UFO space battle, and one of them crashed like in walking distance from me, and I ran to the craft and saw all these ETs inside or whatever. But it makes me wonder now, like, if that really happened and I did run up on a UFO on a crash retrieval, would it be a smart thing to do, or do you just stay away?
It's not a smart thing to do for a number of reasons. You don't want to be there when the military arrives. No way. But also, there are a lot of different radiations that we're not even aware of, different types of radiation, and things in the air that you don't want to breathe. People have come upon these scenes and collapsed and died, within, a few hours.
Wow. Yeah, that's good to think about, because the excitement could take over and you're not thinking about any of that stuff. So you said 9 different ET races are in communication with South America right now. Was that part of the intel also?
Yes. Well, this particular group that he was working with, he said they encountered 9 different ET races. And some of them, he said, were related to Valiant Thor.
Oh.
Yeah, he said they looked very human. He said they put in contacts, but their eyes are a little bit bigger, and the corneas look a little different. He says, but it's, not super noticeable. He said that this group actually claimed to have brought human life to Earth, and they were within our solar system. And they're also he told a very interesting story about the tall whites. He said his group was ordered to set up a perimeter because there was going to be a meeting from an off-world source. Well, he set up the perimeter, and he was closer in towards the inner part of the circle of the perimeter when the craft came in and landed. And he described it as being hundreds of feet, very big craft. It landed, and out came a tall white. And he described them as being about 9 feet tall. And he said that what he was wearing, the equipment he was wearing, was giving him all this data, like, they're 3 meters tall, estimated weight. And I mean, he was getting all of this information in. And as it started walking down the stairs, or on its way down, it stopped. He says it raised its hand. He said all of his men and everyone present, they all dropped down to one knee, and they couldn't move anything but their head like this. And he said the being told them, "Be calm. I'm just here to have a meeting, and I will be gone." And then it walked down, and he said they sat there for like 3 hours in this kneeling position, and with looking out of the corner of their eye to what was going on, the meeting that was going on. And then the being, as it walked by and walked up to get back into the craft, the power broke off of them, and they were able to stand up, and they weren't tired. Their muscles weren't all sore, and he said he was extremely impressed because these suits were developed to help shield the psychic energy and abilities of the reptilians and the Greys, that it attenuated it and did so pretty well. They had to be very close to bust through it. And he said for this tall white, he called it, to walk out, raise its hand, and have everyone drop to their knees wearing this type of protection, he said, was shocking to him, I believe, impressive. And I forgot to describe, he said that the tall white, and I confirmed with him, I said, was its hair, their hair each strand of hair is much thinner than ours. And it's white, and it has this weird translucent look to it when they move their heads. And, he confirmed that, and he said that it was wearing a kind of a long white robe with a collar that went up really high on it. And you couldn't, he didn't describe its feet or shoes, but, he said you could see its hands.
Wow.
Wow.
So that's, when you describe it, I'm just imagining like Hollywood ET stuff that we've seen. It's fascinating to me. Do they have any idea of where they came from, or they not?
He didn't know where specifically that they came from. But what was very interesting is when I started asking him about what did you guys call these beings, he said, well, we would call them the tall whites, but I can't remember I'm going to have the information to share. But it was information I'd seen before about like the reptilians. They're known as like G176 or whatever. They're different. They're always referred to in codes. They wouldn't say, "Oh, we got a reptilian attack." They would say a G476.
Oh, you called it the alphanumeric code names.
Yeah, and he has 9 of, and there are hundreds of them. But he the 9 beings that he knows of. He has the alphanumeric codes for them. And let's see, what else did he describe? He described the reptilians, the Greys, and the tall Greys. He was very adamant to say, they're very different beings. The tall Greys are very different beings. And he said he had not seen a insectoid, but he had on a number of times underground and right after crashes, he had been in firefights with the Greys. I don't know whether it's the talls or the smalls and reptilians. And he said that's the majority of the men that they lost were in those exchanges.
So this was all 20 years ago, right? This is what he was saying was from his experience 20 years ago.
Correct.
So I'm just curious, like, as far as now, like, I know at one point the planet was under a quarantine and these reptilians, nobody could leave. Is there still something going on to where they can't leave and they're stuck here, or can they come and go freely? Or is the Space Force actually taking care of this on some level?
I'm told that there is a cordon that's still going on around our solar system that's preventing not just the reptilians, but a number of ET groups, preventing them from leaving before this solar event occurs.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just wonder how many are actually going to be left by the time that happens, if these battles are taking place.
Yeah, there are battles taking place. And we were talking earlier about, you were asking about deep underground bases being attacked. Information that I had last year and I put out, there were Army and Marine forces that were called into fight to penetrate some of these deep underground bases. And when they did so, they were told that they were going to run into a lot of just families that are being hidden of big criminals. And, you know, they were just going to have to go in and arrest these people. There'd be light resistance once they got through all of the crap they had to blow up and get through. But some of them on the levels that they ended up ingressing in or going into, they ran into reptilians, and they had not been briefed that reptilians even existed. These men did battle and did not go super well for them, and the men were not right in the head afterwards because they had no bridge at all between what they were going to run into and, you know, the judo, you know, the Christian background that they had. Many of them, it was, you know, to them they were fighting the devil and demons, and they just didn't understand what was going on. And a lot of the military groups that had those encounters had to have a lot of help.
Yeah, that's interesting. You don't think about that because that's a major psychological mind fuck.
Yeah.
I mean, if you see something like that, you might just frozen in fear. That term is real. You know, you might not even be an effective soldier anymore just seeing something like that. So it's interesting, you know, knowing what we know now. If I ran into something, I'd be like, oh, it's a tall gray, or it's a reptilian, or it's this, a mantis being. But somebody who doesn't have any reference point, yeah, that would be tough. And that's an interesting point to bring up. I wonder how many times that actually occurs.
Good question. And it sounds like ET crashes occur a lot more frequently than we've been led to believe. You know, he's been on many of them, and often sometimes they are in conflict with another ET group. Sometimes we brought them down. I mean, we're not going to be shooting down our allies like the tall whites or the Nordic groups, but the Greys and apparently the reptilian craft are open game. And you know, I was told, you know, that they use drones to shoot down these craft, along with space-based weapons and ground-based weapons from certain areas. So apparently we shoot down these craft fairly often, and that was apparently what I was told, the case I was told about in Brazil, which would had to have been some time ago. But he's in contact with some of the people from his former group, and these crash retrievals happen on an almost regular basis. And sometimes these ET groups mess up and just crash.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I always wonder about if, you know, that's one of the big skeptics. That's one of one of the big questions for the skeptics is like, well, if they have all this advanced technology, why are they crashing? Like, but I mean, I'm sure there's electrical fields and magnetic fields that they might not even be aware of, or that they're getting pulled into, that's bringing them down. You know, there's so many different scenarios that could happen.
Yeah, and this person also confirmed some things that I had heard about what different groups are coming in and doing with us. This Arcturian race, he described them as being somewhat human-like with a little bit bigger head, bigger eyes, different kind of nose, and that they're a merchant race, that they're coming in constantly to trade with us. They're bringing in, like I've reported in the past, biological materials from other solar systems, technology, and we're trading with them constantly. And a couple of other groups that we're kind of in commerce with. The tall whites have apparently given us quite a bit of technology to use to help fight against the reptilians in particular.
Is that a tornado siren? What is that just saying?
Yeah. Oh, I think somebody started the blender.
Oh.
It didn't sound like a siren.
I mean, it only makes sense that we're being gifted technology to help battle this. I mean, there's no way without any type of assistance we would even be this far along as a civilization in general. So, I mean, that only makes sense. As far as, like, you're talking about these races that are trading with us and these merchant races and all this stuff. You had talked about, like, at one point during your 20 and back on Mars, they were developing out a lot of this technology there, basically under slave conditions. Do you think that's still taking place there, or was that something in the program that might have been another timeline?
No, that's something that's still taking place as far as I know. I don't know how much commerce is going in and out of the solar system right now with everything that's going on, to be honest. But the last I've heard that, those places were still in operation or at least occupied.
And what about the moon? I've heard so many theories about the moon, like there's no longer like a Nazi presence, I guess, on the moon, and the alliance has taken over that. Is there any truth to that?
No. The moon's kind of split up into different zones, pretty much owned by different groups. I've never really given a full briefing about the tour I was given inside the moon. I was taken to all of these deep chambers that I don't know how to describe them. Inside the moon were a bunch of cavities, like spheres, like perfect spheres. And they were in the shape of like the Merkaba inside the moon.
Oh, wow.
And in between each sphere were these long tunnels that had these, the walls were kind of like square, and then it got to wider square, and it was kind of like not really a triangle, but it was kind of a weird shape. But it was a long tunnel that we had built trains inside of, and I traveled inside of that. And there was all sorts of debris. There had been obviously major damage done to whatever this giant mechanism used to be. And they brought us by, all of these long tunnel type chambers. There was damage in them. And then you saw like wiring and coupling of what almost looked like fiber optics running through that was obviously modern, that it had been worked on for a long period of time trying to fix something. They were trying to restore some sort of energy conduit, and we traveled into one of these giant spheres. I couldn't even begin to estimate how big they are. And the spheres all along the inside at one time had been covered in these slightly convex, what looked like mirrors, but they called them collectors. And they were a gold copper alloy that was on top of a layer of some sort of technology. And these were almost like solar panels, the way they looked. And they were all along the inside of this sphere. And coming out the side of the wall was a long, almost like an arm that came out right into the middle of the sphere with a spherical mechanism that you could walk along inside it and out into this mechanism, and somehow it was collecting energy of some sort from these shields. They were somehow collecting subatomic energy or some sort. I really didn't understand. They're collecting some sort of energy that's not really in our frequency and channeling it into these spheres, and then they would come together. These beams would come together, and they could use the energy to make the moon travel, or also operate. There was this big door that opened that had been broken millennia ago. It's broken and kind of in like that on part of the backside of the moon, and you can't really see it except for the bottom. And that door used to open and allow the beam to shoot out as a weapon as well.
Wow. I mean, I remember you also talking about you during that tour on, I think on Cosmic Disclosure, you were talking about even seeing NASA, people in NASA uniforms or coats or whatever. And that surprised me because I thought NASA was strictly a cover, but I guess there is an asset, a compartmentalized asset of NASA that is existing elsewhere.
Yeah, this NASA type group, they would have been working with what we would commonly think of as a Space Force type group, the military industrial level. So they see each other from, their space station, they see them and flying around, and they turn the cameras off when they fly by because they don't want to, they're playing nice with them. They know about each other. Every once in a while, some of the secret military force would actually come onto the International Space Station, and vice versa. They would come onto the craft of the Space Command at that time, but they don't normally interact that much because they're separate. Pretty much NASA was created because the secret space programs had discovered some stuff on the moon that the Earth needed to know about, and they needed the Earth on a lower level of knowledge to start preparing this continuity of species plan to start putting 1% of their GDP into making these deep underground bases and bringing people from every country into each base to they supposedly preserve each culture. In order to get them to spend that kind of money and go through that sort of effort, they had to scare the hell out of them. And they had to let them know about this solar event that happens every 12,000 years. And, the secret space program had discovered ejecta from the sun on the backside of the moon. It had formed these glass structures. And NASA they even let NASA report back that they had seen something that looked like an alien city. But this was actually debris from sun ejecta from the last solar event. They needed to get this information down to the planet, but in a way that didn't blow their operation. So that's what NASA was all about. That's what going to the moon was all about, to go and bring back some of that glass on the side of the planet they landed on, of the moon that they landed on. They mainly got the beads, but a lot of the ejecta that they could take back and say, okay, take this with a lot of our old secret texts, religious texts that talk about the sun exploding. Now we're scientifically finding, information here. Now we need to work together to survive as a species. So that was kind of what was done to get all of these countries to spend money in this continuity of species program.
I guess the big question is, if we did have this technology back then, why were we developing these rockets? What was that, just part of the cover?
Well, yeah, I mean, if they were going to get conventional people up to make an unconventional discovery, they had to use all conventional resources. They had to use rockets. They had to use the computers of the time, which, they were like,
the size of a room.
It's like a calculator, the amount of calculating that it could actually do, like a little calculator that we go and buy at Staples.
Yeah.
So it was really scary what they were doing. to get up into space. But even now, they are keeping that illusion going. They're keeping the illusion that material sciences have just come a long way in the last 50 years, but combustion engines, that we've kind of hit our pinnacle. So
yeah. Does that explain SpaceX? Is that just the continuation of this narrative, this cover, or is something else going on with SpaceX that we're unaware of?
Well, companies like SpaceX are going to be needed because when this technology comes out, they're not going to give it to corporations. You're not going to see FedEx with anti-gravity planes flying around. That's not how it's going to unfold. The privileged few will know that it exists. The privileged few will be using it, but we won't have flying, anti-gravity cars immediately. That's something that's going to take time to acclimate people to. But the conventional, cheap conventional ways of getting things into orbit for corporate level is still, going to be a viable business in the future.
Yeah. Well, it's just funny. I don't know if you watch any of those SpaceX launches, and twice now they've had what they call the space mouse, which is clear. It's evident. You see this little mouse running around on the footage they show. So I think they're still showing us fake footage anyway.
Yeah, I saw that. It was really odd.
I mean, it's clearly not happening in space unless, it just doesn't make sense unless they're filming this somewhere else. And I don't know. I don't know. Does this explain, is Starlink really what we think it is? Is it really for this 5G or whatever? Is there another purpose behind Starlink that you know of?
There's always another purpose. Just about every commercial satellite that goes up has a classified payload of some sort. So, sometimes a lot of these satellites, they're just simply given a part of the network that helps. It's kind of like LiDAR or radar that helps them detect craft coming in, or when anomalies occur created by certain types of stealth technology, it creates an electromagnetic disturbance. And if they have those piggybacked on the satellites flying around, they're more likely to catch that signature. So, they're all different types of piggyback operations that occur with most commercial space flight.
Yeah, that would make sense. That could, what we're told Starlink is, might not even be the case.
It's very possible, or it could be the case, but they've made, they've kept about 20% of the payload kind of off the books, and that's, they're helping out, the NSA or some other group.
Do you know much about this startup company that is developing the new Air Force One? The exosonic or whatever they're called is supposed to be using Mach 5 technology for the new Air Force One. Have you heard about that?
No, I'm not aware.
Yeah, it's something that apparently is in development right now.
No, but interestingly enough, I traveled with some very interesting people, and interesting people there, very high military people, retired. And one of the people, their actual retired general, was, telling us about how how protected Air Force One is. So it's, protected from, missiles, protected from all sorts of things. So he says the current Air Force One, it looks like, old technology, which I guess it is, but the technology that they have in it and on it is, he says, amazing. So I can't.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is because, Trump has to be protected just so much to still be alive, for one thing. And if he's up there flying on an airplane, if he's not, that's a perfect opportunity for them the deep state to take him out. So, they're gonna make sure that's protected, like, unbelievably. So, yeah.
Very, very few airplane crashes or actual accidents.
Yeah.
I think like that one, when was it, a couple of years ago, the guy hijacked the plane and was able to just somehow knew how to fly this plane and flew in the shape of a Q and whatever. Like,
Oh yeah.
you mean
yeah.
that's like
Remember that?
clearly not an accident. Yeah. So as far as what you talked about in Brazil, was there any new information you brought to? I know you spoke on Inner Earth down there, correct? So,
Yeah, I talked about my last, most recent encounters. A lot of what's been going on after I was brought down to their city for 3 days, to where they were trying to teach me a lot, but I was not in the spiritual resonance to where I was going to be able to properly learn this type of information. It was going through my distortions, and there are a number of relationships and situations that were causing me to not just be in the right vibration. And I needed some personal growth in some certain areas. And 2020 has given all of us the time for personal growth.
oh yes.
Yeah. But, there was a lot that I needed to do before I could go to the next level with them. And so since that visit, most of the interactions I've had with them have been coaching me, coaching me along and helping me through the process, burning off karma, working through certain distortions and traumas. So it's been a time of rapid growth, painful growth, but I'm getting close to where I need to be for the next step of them to share more information about fourth density consciousness, the consciousness that we're ascending to.
And at one point, by the way, I can relate to the growth because I've been dealing with some of that myself. At one point, you said that they had actually left Inner Earth and they're existing in these like time bubble anomalies or whatever you refer to them as. Is that still the case? Are they back?
No, they're still inside this temporal anomaly.
Temporal, that's what you call it, yeah. And that's existing in space somewhere, or where would that be?
In its own space-time.
Okay.
All of time is local. On each planet, depending on the planet you're on, the density of that planet affects gravity in a different way. It causes gravity to twist tighter and go quicker. And gravity is the engine of time. So gravity creates time. Without gravity, there is no time. So they can create these gravitational temporal fields to where they can go inside of these fields. And for them, days, weeks may pass by, but for us, maybe thousands of years will pass by, because they've created a completely different temporal little reality bubble within a larger temporal reality.
Yeah, I think that explains, that happens on a lot of different occasions, as far as even an individual being taken and for like 2 weeks, what would seem like 2 weeks, and they're only gone for like 20 seconds or even 2 seconds here, and they're put right back into that same, they're kind of spliced back in. Similar concept to the 20 and back, but it's different. So it makes sense. And it would only make sense they're doing it all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah. Time is, within, space is pulled in by gravity, and space sort of reaches this termination point or density point to where it's not going in as easily. It's piling in on itself. And at that point, gravity is still pulling, and these little microscopic little twists, little eddies are pulled down all around us. It's going on. These little microscopic twists of time, space, are going on all around us. That's what holds us to the ground. That's what's creating the flow of time. And like I said, on each planet, that twist rate is slightly different, a different frequency, and time flows differently. But what we've found out is within each twist is also other dimensions. Not only is time local, but dimensions are local. Dimensions aren't out there everywhere. They're all inside the same little twist rate that is creating our space-time, is creating other space-times. And within these twist rates are other dimensions. We have time is running backwards and forwards, but even quicker at different rates in each direction within the twist rate of every little microscopic area around us. And, our bodies are held together by these tiny little wormholes. Each atom is held together by, it's like a little planetary system. It's held together. And at the center of that atom, it connects through a tiny little wormhole into the cosmic web. And I've talked at length about the cosmic web. All you have to do is Google it to see how everything is connected through an electromagnetic filament. Every galaxy, every star, and every planet within it. And that's how Stargate travel works. That's how a lot of other travel works, but it's also how consciousness works. Consciousness is all connected through this giant cosmic web. That's actually where the Akashic records reside. And but all of it is fed through as these little twists are going down to the center of the Earth, the mass. It's bringing all of that information into the center point of the Earth that feeds into this cosmic web. And that's information is constantly being fed into the cosmic web, into the Akashic records.
If only they could start teaching that in school. We wouldn't all be lost. That's so fascinating, and that was a great explanation of it. I know Michael Salla touches on the wormholes like I know he speaks on that a lot. By the way, is that his book behind you on that shelf?
It is.
That's like the Red Dragon or whatever?
Yeah, the Red Dragon.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. So like that would explain, like you said, all the dimensions are local, so that would explain like maybe the Sasquatch or something like that. When you hear them phasing in and out, they're just existing.
Yes.
So 5D, when people talk about 5D, that's basically just the next level up dimensionally from where we're at currently.
I don't know dimensionally. All I know is that the bandwidth that it works at is the same bandwidth that our consciousness works at. It's not. So it's more consciousness. It's not like physically. We're not gonna like blink out of here and go into another space. It's just consciousness. Yeah. It's affecting our consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always wondered that. Like some people claim that they're already in 5D, and like none of this stuff that's going on right now, this virus, all that stuff, it doesn't affect them because they're in 5D. But
consciousness affects reality, so at the same time, you could say it's kind of the same thing.
There is an aspect of yourself that's in 5D. There is an aspect of yourself that goes all the way up to the one infinite creator. Each level of us, our higher self is us all the way through the densities, connecting to the one infinite creator. That's a 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th density version of ourself, our consciousness that is providing us opportunities for lessons and growth. So to a degree, yes, if the more in contact you are with your higher self, the more in contact and in resonance you are with 5D or whatever, but physically you're stuck here with the rest of us. You may vibrate or resonate into a higher density, but we're all here.
But somebody could still punch you in the face and you'd feel it.
What about the whole our DNA?
Knock you down to 3D real quick.
Yeah.
Like the whole we're moving from the carbon-based to crystalline-based structure in DNA.
I don't know about physically. I mean, I know that as more strands of the DNA are awoken, a different frequency occurs, which allows for growth more of consciousness than anything else and connection with one another. All of the DNA turning into crystal and all of that, I haven't heard in the programs anything remotely like that. But the awakening of the DNA is a very important part of, it all happens in like a big chorus. The DNA starts to change and more strands awaken, which are basically antennas. We have more antennas, and then we're in more communion with each other in a mass consciousness sort of way, which I'm told is like, we talked about Eddie Seti. It's going to be confusing as hell to people.
Telepathic and
you're connecting with people on an emotional level, and You have third density understandings of things. I was talking about how sexuality is really going to freak people out because, we have third density understandings of why you have sex, why you procreate, and all of this. And then fourth density occurs, and then we're like, oh my God, what's going on? You're all of a sudden, people, you're connected with people in a different way, and your third density minds would be like, oh, that must mean supposed to have a physical relationship, when that's not really the fourth density way. It's just a third density way of thinking while experiencing the fourth density energies. So we're gonna have to deal with more and more of that as confusion as well.
Yeah, I've heard that, if this, let's just say this solar flash takes place, and it's kind of like what we expect, we might all of a sudden be enlightened on some level, but that's our consciousness. Our physical body is still going to have to make the transformation, and it's not going to be easy. Is that plausible? You think that could happen?
And I wouldn't go as far as to say people are going to be enlightened as much as they're going to be confused. Okay. The small percentage of people that are doing the inner work and doing the spiritual work, they're going to be more enlightened. Everyone else, it's not like everyone's going to pop their head out of the sand and go, I understand now. No, they're going to be thrown into chaos, and it's going to be a mess for a while. The transition to fourth density, I'm told and shown, it's not going to be this everyone flying around singing Kumbaya. It's going to be people trying to figure out, now how do we operate in this new way of consciousness, this new connectivity that we have.
So it's going to be like a whole nother layer of like a dark night of the soul. Because like right now we see the planet going through a dark night of the soul, but it's still only at a certain level. So I feel like once the ascension that starts happening more and more, or once the solar flash happens, it's going to be like a whole nother massive dark night of the soul for everyone who's not used to that.
Imagine you're the normal person out. You've rationalized all these different behaviors. You're a good person, but you're doing all of these things that are kind of iffy. Mm-hmm. And this solar flash occurs, and then all of a sudden you go from having that sort of a consciousness to having more of a Christ-like consciousness, a loving, connected kind of thing, to where you see how you violated free will here, you've violated free will here, manipulating or doing this, or taking here because you deserved it or whatever. And you go through a rapid processing of karma because you have a different understanding of that mindset. But you also are going to have to break cycles, ways of thinking. It's often going to cause a dark night of the soul.
It's like clarity is a good way to put it. I guess you have a whole new clarity on yourself and everyone else and reality in general. Well, I guess.
I mean, that's what. Go ahead.
Well, I was told, everybody's had it wrong. That at the end of an age, this energy, the preceding part of the major energy that causes this ascension, is what they refer to as the Christ consciousness part of the energy. And that energy sweeps through before the big change occurs. It's a little bit of an attenuated, weaker version of the big change energy coming through. And this energy comes through, and it's not somebody on a horse with a sword, coming to judge. It is an energy that forces each of us to judge ourselves. Because you know what? We are the judges of ourselves. Because all we are, if these beings are correct that I've been talking to, is that I've described how the one infinite creator wanted to understand duality from every possible perspective. So into all of every consciousness, everything that could possibly experience anything in this universe is a spark of that one infinite creator wanting to understand duality in every possible way. So us coming and as we go through these consciousness evolutions, we go to fourth, fifth, sixth density, seventh density, and then we return to the one infinite creator, bringing all of that experience back with us. And that's what the ascension process is all about, is to return to the one after going through the learning process of being these egos, this illusion of separation from the one. So when we are forced to judge ourselves, who better to do the judging?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think anybody who's listening to this, who's tuning into this right now, already understands that on some level, because an awakening for me has been me judging myself every day. And it's just been in a path of self-discovery, finding out who I am, even because the first 30 years of my life, I had no clue.
Well, few are willing to do that, though. I mean, I have met so many guru types that a lot of people look up to. I've met people, just so many people. They have all of this knowledge to make these wonderful changes, but most of them don't apply it. There's this percentage of people that are not able to look inwardly and able to make the changes as brilliant, as they may be, and knowing all of the answers.
And a lot of that isn't everybody's individual. It's not their fault because of the system and the distractions and the programming. You can be smart and have a lot of knowledge in a certain area, like what we're talking about. But as soon as you go back to work, if you have a 3D job, that consumes your mind now. You're thinking about work. You're thinking about, I have to pick my kids up from school, all this stuff. And then you get sucked back in and you forget about all this amazing stuff you just learned. And that's part of the trap.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so that's part of it. I just want to shift gears here a little bit before we start wrapping up. I know at ECETI you had some briefings about Q and Flynn being allowed back into the briefings or the meetings for the first time since Trump's inauguration. Has any more information surfaced about that as far as General Flynn specifically?
No, but ironically, I was very disappointed. My internet was down and I was out of communicado, and I missed a major briefing yesterday by people connected to Flynn's network.
Oh, man.
So I missed a pretty big meeting. I heard they were excited. So hopefully I'll get at least a bit of what I missed, but no, it was going to be my first really good briefing after coming back from Brazil.
Oh, okay. We'll call them up right now. We'll just do it live. We'll get the briefing. And as far as, I know you had some information about Q, and you had mentioned there potentially being 17 members of the actual team itself.
Yeah, I said, what I'd heard is originally President Trump was approached to run for president by, I believe, 3 generals and an admiral that told him, listen, this stuff's as bad as you've heard. If you don't run, we're going to do something drastic. And he agreed. And those same military people that I mentioned, and a total of 17 people created what the program that would be Q. So that those people operate in their cell bubble, and they report information to the alliance, which I get briefings from, and they trickle out information, sometimes related, sometimes unrelated, through QAnon, because that information is to inform the public in a way that makes them want to dig and find the information themselves, because they know when you do that, you own it. No one can tell you it's But also they use it to deliver information to operatives in the field in weird code sort of ways. So it has a multi-tiered purpose.
Yeah. I know some of those drops are not meant for the public. There's just no way. I'm like, clearly this is some type of comms going on.
Yeah.
And what's funny is the people that break it down and come up with all these theories on what it means, when it might actually just be a specific code or something for a team somewhere, waiting for their.
But you see how effective it is? You have your QAnon people that are saying, wow, there's definitely a code there. And they spend all this time and all their resources trying to figure out what that code might be. Well, so does the enemy of the alliance. Whenever something cryptic like that comes out, sometimes they put out just cryptic nonsense just because they know that some, team is going to have to spend hours and hours in a lab going through it, using their time and resources on that type of information. So, this stuff goes so deep. There are so many counterintelligence types of things going on.
It's like psychological warfare just as much as it is
absolutely
physical war. It's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's why all these dates that Q has delivered in the past, some of them are just probably just purely to throw off the enemy.
I'm sure.
It forces them to prepare for this date. Even though there might not be anything coming, they have to put their energy into being ready.
And it might be, a date might be up, but there might be a code that says, okay, there's a secondary code if you take, if a date pops up, if you take the second digit in each one and take it and put it into this PIN device, and then it unlocks the code. So a date could just be a way to disguise putting some numbers out for a code. So, people out there in the QAnon world, they really don't know how counterintelligence works. And they start looking for, demons under doilies and all sorts of big, grand things, when a lot of times it's a very simple explanation.
Yeah, and a lot of people get upset about that. They get these expectations based on people's research and their theories. It's dangerous sometimes. It's not helping.
It is dangerous, but disinformation and these types of things are also helpful to the alliance. Because like I said, for every QAnon person that is trying to unlock these things, there are deep state, at least one deep state operative. And the more of those people that are locked up, chasing ghosts, the fewer resources they have to make life difficult for the alliance.
Yeah. And is there any information on the amount of people leaving the deep state or the cabal and joining the alliance right now? I mean, they have to have people acting as double agents on some level, or something has to be going on. It's not just all black and white.
Well, actually, yeah, that's one of the biggest problems of what happened last year. I even had some issues with some of the people myself. There were a lot of compromised people or double agents that were coming into the alliance that were causing, just some serious problems. And that's one of the major reasons that briefings shut down, last year, to a wide degree. They would have bridge calls to where, someone important would call into a certain bridge number and put it on their speakerphone, and then on their cell phone allow one person or a couple people to kind of listen in when they're not supposed to. Often I had briefings like that, I hate to say, but those bridge calls were shut down. And then that's when a lot of last year there's been so much disinformation coming out. I've tripped over some myself. It's, you have these, generals, admirals, colonels, and people that are used to, getting major briefings, having all of the intel. They're used to, all of the people around them coming to them for the information. It's kind of an ego kind of thing as well. When all that information cuts off, well, a lot of these people, they'll sit around and just kind of, there's a little bit of information coming out here and there, and then they'll speculate, and then the information's delivered as though it's a briefing instead of, a speculative type of briefing.
Yeah.
So a lot of that happened in the last year. It caused a lot of disinformation, and a lot of people lost trust with their sources because of it, which caused a lot of damage. But the infiltration into the alliance was pretty significant, and it caused quite a bit of damage. But a major purge has been going on.
That's great. So this intel that you had about the time travel, like the ETs being all time traveling from the future, the ETs are just us from the future. Do you think that narrative is still going to play out on any level, or was that just also part of the disinfo?
No, I'm told that that's going to be a very big part of the disclosure that they give, that we're going to see more and more scientific articles coming out talking about time travel, which we've actually seen.
Yeah, I did.
So they're going to start trying to, because most people, we've just now understand, the vast distances of space and how some celestial mechanics work, as a consciousness. Very few understand how time works. And, and so they're trying to kind of get the consciousness kind of prepped for a lot of time travel sorts of things. And what they're really going to say is that, since 1950, we've been working with a U.S. military group in the future. They say we have to keep it secret until we get closer to the year that they exist, and then it's just common knowledge. Then we talk about it.
Mm.
So all these years that we're living in now, leading up to this, like 2020, that's just 2027. Let's just say that's not a real date I've heard, but let's say that that's where all of the the headquarters for the people I even worked for, let's say that they're, in the future, because we're all pulled out of space time. Eventually, as we get closer to 2027, they're going to have to release more and more information to get us ready, because the time has caught up to where it's no longer people from the future, it's now people from the present. So that's what I'm told that they are briefing a lot of military and even presidential people on, is to explain to them, the UFOs that we're seeing are mostly our craft in the future causing a temporal butterfly effect, a temporal anomaly. And sometimes things happen and they pop through into our time period and crash. And we just have to secure that and get the wreckage and technology away and hide it from the public, because we can't contaminate the timeline. It's this big kabuki kind of dance that I'm told has been going on.
Yeah, that's unfortunate if Trump, if that is the briefings that Trump has been getting, or whoever.
Well, he doesn't get, Trump gets meetings from a lot of different perspectives. I mean, that may be a briefing that he got, but he's also had people come in and brief him about ETs and aliens and that sort of thing. He's gotten different types of briefings about our secret space program that he wasn't really supposed to get, but they weren't going to give it to him, so different people leaked it to him or gave it to him. So he gets information in a multitude of ways. He's not going to form an opinion just on that one briefing.
That's great news, actually. Because I wondered how that would work. I'm very curious to see what happens after this election. By the way, do you think that they were using voice of God technology on Biden last night?
I don't know. I mean, they have very good microphones that they can inject into your ear right here. It's kind of like a tiny little implant into your ear.
That's what I heard.
I wonder why then, because there's a video that shows he had a wire that popped out of his jacket, and then there was also a device popping out of his sleeve.
Yeah,
so,
that's usually a mic. But I don't know why he would need.
But yeah, why would he need that if he had? But maybe they just did that as a backup or something.
Or that was just a total decoy.
Or that was a decoy.
A decoy device, and they were like, "Oh no, they're going to come out and prove this was what it was," and then really the real technology was tricked.
Could be.
Because I read an article that said that he was potentially working through a chip that might have been enhancing this voice of God type of technology.
No, it's kind of like Bluetooth.
Okay.
Like hooked to a device in his pocket, and this little size of a grain of rice speaker would go right inside the skin of the ear, this little flap of the ear.
Yeah, and
also pretty sure he was a clone.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
clone.
What are your thoughts on the potential, the reality of clones being used right now for these, Kamala Harris and Biden and stuff like that?
Well, clones are widely used, and they have been for a while. The only drawback is if you clone, let's say if someone came in the middle of the night and made 5, took your genetic material and went off and created 5 of you, to then they would train to do different tasks. Well, if something happened and one of your clones died in a spacecraft explosion, another one was killed by some sort of a bunch of carnivorous insects on a planet, and all of these traumatic things occurred to your clones, that feeds back through consciousness to the actual person, and they start having all of this crazy PTSD. They get suicidal. They have all sorts of issues. That was happening. Like for people, if you happen to be a star and somebody wants to do something crazy to you, and they're in these programs, they could have a clone of that person that they do all the horrible things they want to do to, and then just dispose of the clone. Well, that energetic trauma feeds back through to this, to the person that's not the clone. So
wow.
There's a lot of, they ran into a lot of issues. It took them a while to figure it out because they stopped using a lot of 20 and back people pulled in as much, mostly from the military. They still did, but they started cloning people and using them in warfare and for certain things. And the clones began having just psychological issues.
Yeah. Wow. I actually wasn't aware of that. I've done a lot of research on clones, but I didn't realize that anything happening to the clones affects the original person.
To a small degree, it feeds back, but it builds up. And if you have multiple clones going through all these different things, it can cause, some major psychological issues.
One last question, and we'll wrap this up. Do you think, are 20 and backs still taking place? Or is this still a current program?
Yes. It's each star system has its own, like a planet. They call it like a Chronos planet that sets this clock in their planetary system. Ours happens to be Saturn, and Saturn has some weird cycle that causes creates the situation that we can exploit to create 20 and backs, where you're creating these different time anomalies to pull people out of and work within. And we were taught how to do this by a Nordic race.
And that's still going on. So the potential of people living or participating in 20 backs right now is very high. Military people, I guess.
Yeah, mostly military. They rarely pulled people out like myself that were not in the military. You had to have had a coveted ability for them to do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been amazing, Corey. Thank you so much. I mean, we covered a lot.
Can I talk about some of my projects?
I was just gonna ask you about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Please,
cool.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. For 3 years, I've been working very hard to get a graphic novel out. We ran into a whole host of issues, but we brought on a writer, Richard Hamilton. He's written. He's a script writer as well. He's written some well-known scripts, even for animated series like How to Train Your Dragon. He took the graphic novel, totally rewrote it. We have Steven and a couple of other artists that are hitting it really hard right now, and we're going to have that out very soon. The script is turned out great, and now the art is getting knocked out. So we're super excited about that finally coming out. And then the main thing I have going on are my courses that I'm doing. We had, at acceleratingascension.com, we had, thousands of people take the course, love the course. It did super well. We have the new course coming out, the Blue Avians and the Law of One, where I'm going to talk about the Blue Avians and how they relate to the Law of One and how what that information was meant for us as a species. And if people want to check that out, they can go to ascensionworks.tv, and that's where you can find both courses there. Really.
And yeah, ascensionworks.tv is that actually active, or is that still in process? Is that still working?
No, it's active. It's active. It's going to eventually become a streaming platform. I'm talking to a number of people about doing their own shows, but we have cool things coming, like high up people that were in the military that are going to teach us things like survival, teach women, tactics of, because in time madness, it's getting crazy out there, teaching women how to be more confident about security. a lot of different things like that. There's going to be a lot of really cool things, at ascensionworks.tv. But on another topic, I've been working with Jenny McCarthy. She's awesome. She is basically tribe. If you were to ever have a conversation with her, she's one of us. She's
I could tell from that interview that she did with you and David.
I got that
Awesome.
impression. She knows what's going on. Definitely.
Yeah. She's been a really big help to me, and she's come on as executive producer for a couple docuseries ideas that I have, and some other work that I've been doing, getting the graphic novel when it's completed to a major publisher. She's made her managers and WME agents available to help me. She's been amazing, it's things are looking really good for us to get a series out that is basically going to allow me to reproduce all of my testimony that I've given in the past, most of which is not available now. But it's going to give us an ability to deliver it to a much larger audience and a much larger platform, which in turn is going to bring more eyes to the community as people wake up and hear the information, and more people come and watch your show and other people's information.
Yeah, and then they're really going to shit whenever they discover all this information 2 years from now, and then they're like, oh my God, he's been talking about this since 2014, 2015.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are going to have a problem explaining, how all of this information that I brought forward has come to be. But a lot of it has already. A lot of it has.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that's where all of us come in. Everybody who's out doing something in this community and for this movement, for these people that are going to be discovering this stuff down the line, they're going to be turning to people like us for questions,
Mm-hmm.
Undoubtedly. I mean, it's more of this. I mean, we're delivering, other movie ideas and stuff that are basically like, a metaphysical matrix, that information that you can get out. I mean, the information about my life story, I mean, it's fascinating, from a cinematic point of view and from a content point of view for like a docuseries or something. And, people may watch it as entertainment, but, that information is getting out and to them. So, I've been really pushed and led to start using media as a way to get this information out, to have an effect on the mass consciousness, because, just preaching to the choir, like many of us do on, small networks or little groups, it's great work, but we're just preaching to the choir. It's not getting out there. So it's great because I'm going to be having my little preach to the choir network too. I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I'm going to have that, going, but also finding ways to get the information out onto big networks and seeding the consciousness that way. And it also brings new people in for all of our work. Yeah.
And I think that, the echo chamber is a real thing, and that's happening all over the place. But we can't discredit that and discount that, because people are drawn to that. People are guided to that, and it's growing. It's growing, even if it's an individual, one person at a time. Even though it is preaching to the choir, the choir is growing.
Yeah, we definitely need to grow the choir.
Yeah. Well, Corey, this has been amazing. We covered so much. The new information was fascinating. All of it was, actually. It's been so long since I've heard you talk about even the stuff about the moon and all that stuff. So I think a lot of people will enjoy this. And I just want to thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I appreciate you guys having me on. And I'm glad you're going to be breaking some of this new insider information.
We're definitely excited.
We're honored. Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to do an interview with one of the people that is helping disseminate the information that introduced me to this insider. I'm going to do an interview with him on my channel, and I will put you guys in contact with him as well, because it will be an equally fascinating interview as to what we just had today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That would be great.
That'd be amazing.
That's exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, that's my thank you for having me on and helping me break this info. So,
well, I appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
We'll definitely stay in contact. All right, well, I guess we'll wrap this up. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for all the support, the donations. It means everything. We couldn't do it without you guys, and you know that. And, you know, we just want to show Corey some gratitude again for putting himself out there. And, you know, we're all under attack right now, so it's not easy. It's not easy even being alive right now, trying to do this work. So thank you. Thank you for your support. It means everything. And we'll see you next week. Have a great night.